This is the Global Podcast Network, where executives and professionals connect, share, and inspire. Stay tuned for the conversations that drive success.
We are back with our international speaker, also a trial lawyer. I mean, he has many hats, this man. James J. Traitz joining us here again live today to talk more about the work he does and, of course, all the lives that he's impacting and still continuing along the journey of wanting to heal the world. That's what he's doing, one person at a time. So it's exciting that you're back here today. Pleasure to get to have you back. And for those new timers today that are tuning in, just give us a little overview about a little bit about, who you are, Jim. And I can call you Jim, right?
Yes. Well, thank you for having me. Basically, I work as a trial lawyer, but my first love is philosophy. And I mentioned that last week. And but there's not a big appetite for philosophy in our society, and there should be. So my primary wish is to be an inspirational speaker. Today, I wanted to talk about a couple of things. The first being consciousness, that's human consciousness, and AI. So what's AI? Artificial intelligence. You hear about it everywhere now. People worried about artificial intelligence taking over the world, wondering how will artificial intelligence surpass mankind? Is it consciousness? And if it is not consciousness, what's the difference between human consciousness and AI? So I want to launch into that a little bit. Let me start by saying that what I call the substance of the universe is consciousness. Now, we're not raised that way. We're raised to believe that the substance of the universe is matter. And what I call the materialism myth has been dominant on our planet, going almost all the way back, shortly after Aristotle. Aristotle came up with the concept of substance. Substance meaning simply that, beyond the appearances that reality takes, there must be a something, a fundamental thing, basically, that then manifests in all of the things we perceive. Well, science came along and called substance matter and has been chasing that myth ever since. The problem is that if the substance of the universe is matter, then that leads to a fear-greed dichotomy. People now will say, oh, no, I understand it's not matter, it's energy, and energy can take the appearance of matter. And I'm saying that's almost all the way there. They're not quite there. It is not simply electromagnetic energy, it's consciousness. So electromagnetic energy arises from consciousness. Well, and what is consciousness? Basically, consciousness is aware, spiritual energy, and everything in the universe arises from consciousness. I will talk about AI in a second, but let me just mention this, because scientifically minded people out there may say, well, that sounds great, but is there any scientific demonstration of that? So there was a very famous experiment called the double slit, SLIT experiment, that's been around for many, 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 many decades. And it arose like this. What happened is that they would basically have a photon gun. So what are photons? Photons are so-called particles of light. So any light source in this set, including your lamp, is a photon gun, theoretically. So what they did is they were trying to determine, are light particles or are they waves? So they have a board and a single slit. There's another slit that can be opened or closed. Behind it is a photosensitive plate. So they would shine the light at the slit, and it would lead to a bright line on the photosensitive plate behind the slit where the light went through. Behave like particles. Well, they opened a second slit, so now both slits are open.
Wow.
When they did that, there was no band of white behind the slits. There was an interference pattern.
Okay.
And it's, light must be waves, because what must be happening is the light is going through the slits as waves, and waves, just like if you throw a rock into a pond, that you're getting these waves and you get this interference pattern. So they thought, well, that was interesting. And now what they decided to do was, what they did next, as they got more and more sophisticated in years went by, they developed a photon gun that could shoot individual photons. They were also able to do it.
Whoa.
Is something wrong?
Oh, no, I'm shocked. I never heard of this. A photon. Wow. This is so scientific. I'm feeling back like I'm in college. Go ahead.
Well, here's the thing. They were able to do it with electrons, but they were able to shoot them one at a time. Now, here's what gets fascinating. It's going to get real mysterious here. Open one slit, you shoot the electrons or photons, it does not matter. And they act like little BBs, go right through that slit, and there's a light streak right behind the slit.
Wow.
Now, when they opened both slits, they got an interference pattern. But wait a minute. We were shooting photons one at a time. We were shooting electrons one at a time. How can a single electron create an interference pattern unless somehow it went through both slits and interfered with itself? And they were completely blown away. And so then they developed a basic measuring device. So what's a measuring device? A measuring device would be able to tell which slit the electron actually went through. So they have the two slits open. The measuring device is on, the detecting device actually, and they start shooting electrons one at a time. The electrons went back to behaving as particles. In other words, when the detector is not on, the electrons remain waves and form an interference pattern. When it's being watched, it no longer becomes a wave, it becomes a particle. And this was happening again and again and again. Of course, it blew people away, because, like, how does the electron know that it is being observed?
Yeah.
And how can observation alter fundamental reality unless consciousness, human consciousness in this situation, is actually manifesting physical reality? Of course, the punchline is that's exactly what's happening. But here's what gets even more fascinating. There are many skeptics out there, because we have what I call old paradigm physicists and scientists and new paradigm physicists and scientists.
Okay.
Our entire science has been based on materialism, and I call it the materialism myth. And therefore, if the universe is a entity out there independent of us, and it's matter or matter energy, then our consciousness should not be able to influence it. Well, it does. So the skeptics came up with experiment after experiment to defeat and prove somehow that we are not programming reality at a fundamental level. That's impossible. How can we possibly have that power? We're obviously biochemical entities that were produced by the universe, and we have no real power, which is absolutely backwards. So every experiment verified what I'm describing.
Okay.
As late as 2017, though, they came up with an incredibly clever test.
Okay.
Here's what they did. So they knew that if there is no, and remember, a measuring device or is an extension of consciousness, right?
Yeah.
It is basically an extension of our consciousness. So they know that if the detecting device is off, if there's no observation, those electrons or photons will absolutely act as a wave and create an interference pattern. Because it's since the first day this experiment's ever been done, It always happens that way. When you observe it, it manifests and becomes
Wow.
particles.
Okay.
So the skeptic said, we have an ace up our sleeve. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to set it up so that there is no observation when the protons or electrons go through the slits. So we know it's going to be an interference pattern. But we're going to put an observation device after the slits, but before the photosensitive plate. So now they're going to say, we already know, we're kind of cheating.
Hey.
We already know it's going to be an interference pattern because we have two slits open and it's not being observed at that point. And then when we show it's an interference pattern, that'll prove that the mere active observation does not change the underlying reality. Well, they run the experiment and were destroyed. Guess what happened?
Oh,
so
no.
when
Wow.
when the observation occurs after the double split, before the plate, it goes back to being particles again. And they go, wait a minute.
Wait a
That's not
sec.
possible. Because if there's no observation when the
Oh my
light
gosh.
or electrons are going past the double slit, that's an interference pattern. How can, after they've already gone through the slit,
Yeah.
how can simply observing them
Amazing.
manifest the reality? And so here's the one and only inescapable conclusion, and kind of like defeated the skeptics. They're now out of ideas. Here's what it means, and here's the implication. That what's happening is retrocausation, okay? First of all, I spoke last week that time is really a myth. It's a way of perceiving reality. So watch what's happening. It's like when the observation occurs,
Yep.
the light or the electrons on some level know they have been observed.
Yeah.
And what happens is it causes a back history, and literally it jumps back in time and converts the wave into particles. So literally observation, I say creates reality, manifests it. So there is a reality out there. I call it the mind of God, for want of a better term, but it is not physical. There is no physical matter until observed by an observer. So literally, if you were to remove all consciousness from the universe would stop existing.
Wow.
So let me say it again. Observation doesn't just create an immediate reality, it creates the entire universe.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what about AI? And by the way, I could speak hours on that double slit experiment. And
This is great.
There's a little cartoon thing depicting it. It's called Dr. Quantum, I think.
Mm-hmm.
There's a 17-minute video by new paradigm physicists that demonstrate mathematically and scientifically that basically everything is consciousness.
Okay.
Everything is consciousness. So, well, somebody might say, well, wait a minute, Jim. AI is growing exponentially, and so is there a difference? Is how in what ways will AI never do what human consciousness can do? Well, AI can play a chess game. AI
True.
can, with sheer crunching numbers, calculate stuff. But I made a list of a few things
Sure.
that AI cannot do. Okay. AI cannot have self-conscious awareness of itself, the I am. One. Two, AI can't change its mind. A human being can change its mind. The issue of will. And how do I define will? Well, will, and isn't will and desire the same thing? No. Desire is when you do what you want.
Yeah.
Will is when you can do what you don't want. When you can do what you don't want. So that's another area. AI will not have will.
True.
Altruism, acting opposite to one's self-interest out of some greater purpose. AI cannot do that. Imagination, intuition, and gut knowing. AI cannot have gut knowing.
You're right.
Changing one's mind. I've mentioned that already. other
Mm-hmm.
areas, dreaming, ecstasy, wonder, love, and most importantly, AI cannot collapse wave functions. There is a Zen concept, Hishiro consciousness, which is consciousness beyond thought. So most people, and materials especially, believe that the highest level is reason, thinking. It is not. Beyond
Mm-hmm.
reason and thinking is consciousness beyond thought. So if you stop your mind and you're not thinking, okay, and you just stop, it's hard to do, but you stop your thoughts, you don't cease to exist. Nor does your consciousness cease to exist. Your conscious actually expands. Conscious actually expands. So that's consciousness beyond thought. Well, AI is basically a thinking mechanism. It crunches numbers, it calculates, just like a supercomputer might.
Yeah.
Now, but here's what AI. So if I was facing some incredibly advanced AI structure, okay, let's say I were to say to that structure, okay, stop thinking,
Okay.
stop processing, stop calculating, and just be. Just sit in silence and be.
Okay.
It can't. It would not exist.
No.
It would cease to exist. Because it's a calculating, thinking apparatus. And there's a interesting philosophical question that goes like this: who is it that knows I'm thinking? So I
Mm.
may be sitting there saying, God, that was weird. I
Yeah.
was thinking, I just caught myself thinking about an event that happened last year. It came into my mind. So who is the I that observed, gee whiz, that's weird that I was thinking about that? Who is it that knows, that I am thinking? So consciousness
Yeah.
is the 800-pound gorilla in the room for the materialists and the scientists, because they have believed in a world, in a universe that is independent of consciousness. And they believe absurdly, that if there's enough complexity, say single-celled creatures and whatnot, so-called evolution,
Okay.
you create consciousness. No, the consciousness existed first. So
Yeah.
consciousness pre-existed. Well, consciousness has always existed. It's outside of space-time. So I could do a whole class on consciousness
Mm-hmm.
and what it really means. Here's what's also interesting, I think.
Mm.
So with physics, one of the fundamental laws of physics is the law of entropy. Entropy mandates that in the universe, things move, all systems go from order to less order to disorder. So things wind down, like a clock winds down, like the universe winds down, like
Yeah.
in X number of billion years, the sun will
Yeah.
burn itself out. That
Mm-hmm.
if you take any kind of a so-called substance or person or
Mm-hmm.
animal or anything and leave them out in the elements and the
Mm.
sun too long, little by little, they fall apart and disintegrate and fall away. So law of entropy. So everything in the universe goes from order to disorder as it winds down and wears down. Here's the issue: information. There's a whole now area now they're calling it information physics, which and they
Wow.
believe that maybe the dark matter in the universe is information. Now
Ah.
we know Stephen Hawking said
Wow.
that with a black hole, that everything can be defined by information. So if you took like an Earth or anything else and it got pulled into a black hole, what would happen is the information that can replicate that object remains in the event horizon in two-dimensional form, which means you can replicate Earth or anything else that went into that black hole. And they
Wow.
realize information cannot be destroyed. But wait a minute, what about the law of entropy? Well, here's what's interesting. Information grows and becomes more complex, not less complex. So we are adding to the information overload. So wait, it's not winding down, it's actually growing. Somewhere else, entropy doesn't apply. DNA. Well,
Oh
that's the
my.
DNA. No, wait a minute. If we started allegedly as single cell creatures and then became slightly larger and more, and then rudimentary life forms, and then more complex, and ultimately wound up with human beings, what happened to entropy? Because what happens is reality is actually growing in complexity and violating the law against entropy. Uh, so what happens is they are now recognizing that information is a fundamental aspect of the universe. And where is information contained? In consciousness.
Yep.
Information exists in consciousness, which means everything in the universe is not just consciousness, it arises from consciousness and is created by consciousness. And when people say, well, where does consciousness come from? I said, well, I call it the mind of God, but it is a fundamental feature of the universe. So we are incredibly powerful. We manifest our own reality. Okay, our beliefs are the wrong beliefs block it, but literally we create our immediate physical experience by virtue of our beliefs, expectations, and feelings. So we are co-creators. The vast majority of mankind, I know I'm running out of time here, vast
It's
majority of
okay. We
mankind,
got more time.
vast majority of mankind, I say, are unconscious co-creators. They're creating their life, but they don't realize they're doing it. Things just seem to happen. Somehow, when I was a little boy, I wanted to be an engineer, and here I am, I'm an engineer or a doctor or a school teacher or a manager, or I started a business. And it just kind of happened. I kind of like each day I believed it, and it just kind of happened. Well, the key is to become conscious co-creators, because if you're conscious of it, then you can intelligently and sanely direct your reality. And the unconsciousness of sleeping mankind is why we have all of the problems that we have. Just look around, look at the news, and it's a really sad state. So that's when I say I want to heal the world. I see, I'm not the only one, by the way, a world in which the vast majority of people are machines. What do I mean by machines? Well,
Well, it's
they
happening.
are they are affected by every influence around them. Their parents, their upbringing, their school, social media, their beliefs, and what science tells them. Science tells them what? You're merely a biochemical physical creature that descended or ascended from the apes. Okay. So religious people believe you have a soul, but that doesn't make sense to a scientist. That's like gobbledygook, spiritual
Yeah, let's
stuff.
go back to the photons and
Yeah,
electrons, but yeah.
and bottom line is we are not biochemical creatures.
No.
That is the manifestation we take. We are spiritual beings,
Yeah.
and if someone wants to know, does that mean there's life after death? I say it this way: there's no death after life. Yeah, because you already exist on some level in the next dimension. You are always going to live because time is not really going by. You're moving through an incarnation. Okay, so the past exists right now, multiple pasts really, and the future exists, but it's dimensionalized out. The only thing that truly exists is the now, right now. And I use a little gimmick to illustrate that, and I'll tell people when I speak, there's only 2 days of the year where you cannot accomplish anything. There are 2 days of the year where you
Oh,
have no power, no ability to do anything, and where nothing can be accomplished. 2 days of the year. Those
what
two
days
days,
are they?
yesterday and tomorrow.
Perfect. Wow.
Yeah. So all that exists is now, is today. All right. So imagine the sad state of the earth and mankind. Well, most people go through life believing this. The now, this moment, this is a tiny little thought, this instant. And there's this huge past and a huge future in front of them, and this fleeting little momentary dot that's now. And the answer is no, that's not true. There is not a huge past and a huge future. There is only now.
Now, the
And
present.
from now, you can tune in the future and you can reprogram the past. But imagine if you don't believe that the now is nothing but a fleeting moment and that you're just a biochemical creature that's going to die, and you hope, oh my God, I hope I have a soul. No, the opposite. You are a soul now. You are eternal now. You will live forever.
We will
now.
always be.
Your consciousness is all powerful, and everything is the now. That's the bottom line of the message.
Wow. Okay. Jim Traitz. I mean, you fascinate me because, last week was our first time speaking and I got to know a lot about you and your amazing success with YouTube and everything that happened to you and how you were touched in a sense. And it's like, wait, this guy's a lawyer? Wait, what? Turned like, I don't even know how to describe you, but incredibly insightful and clearly gifted in so many different areas to go and talk about, the present, the past, the info, the AI today. It's just like,
mention, in case people weren't in last week, last real quick thing I want to mention is that if people want to see more, they can go on YouTube and type in my first and last name, not all run together like
one word.
James Traitz, Traitz, and about 150 or 60 3 and 4 minute videos will pop up. Now, some of them deal with extraterrestrial issues, UFOs, because I did some with a world famous, well, he's more than a UFO researcher, Dr. James J. Hurtak. And so some of them are there, but my message isn't about that. As I said last week, are there extraterrestrials? Are there UFOs? Sure there are. Yeah. Sure there are. But most would be physical. They're not more advanced than us. They are not more spiritually advanced than us, certainly. What's more important are what we call the ultra-terrestrials and the angelic order of beings, which, by the way, our higher selves are part of that angelic order. So we already are, in a sense, incipient ultra-terrestrials.
Wow.
So we're multidimensional creatures. So you have a reality that sits outside of space-time, okay, that you are directly connected to, which never dies. But your larger self cannot fully fit into three-dimensional reality because three-dimensional reality is smaller, in quotes, because we're not talking physically, than our greater selves, So the idea is to come awake. The idea is to come to realization that we are not physical beings. We're spiritual beings living a physical life, and our purpose is to learn and understand that our energy, through our thoughts, feelings, and beliefs, creates reality. We are growing into becoming creators.
Beautiful. Well, unfortunately, we are out of time. I love speaking with you. Did I mention last week about my uncle? I'm not sure if I did because
I think so.
My uncle was abducted back in the 80s, the Manhattan alien abduction, which is on Netflix now. He actually speaks in it, but he's someone who's been touched, who's been up in that craft, who came back, taught us life lessons. And I mean, how that changed his life, our lives, being in the family to learn. And it's just, we have more to talk about with that another time. But unfortunately, we got to go.
We got to go. But real quick, if somebody asked me, what would happen if you came face to face with extraterrestrials? They landed face to face. What would you say to them? I look them in the eye and I'd say, have you also discovered that you create your own reality?
Beautiful. Thank you so much, James.
My pleasure.
We appreciate your time here today, as always. Thank you for being here. And if someone does want to reach out to you, would you mind sharing how we could do so?
Well, it's easier because I have a personal email, but it gets a lot of junk. So my
Yes.
law email, Traitz, first initial, last name, JTRAITZ at TraitzLawFirm.com. Not Traitz Law, TraitzLawFirm.com. And you can access me on YouTube, as I said, where I cover, well, I have at least 140. None of them have to do with law. None
Uh-huh.
have to do with law. Yeah. Yeah. Law is just something I do during the day because I like helping clients and people that have suffered at the hands of bad actors. But
Mhm.
but that's only helping clients one at a time.
Wow.
To me, the most important thing I can do is be one of those, of which there's a number of us, who one of our purposes is to wake up sleeping mankind. Wake up
Beautifully
sleeping
said.
mankind.
Well, thank you for being on this mission and for joining us and letting more people know. Again, look for him on YouTube as well. Type in his full name with the spaces. And you have a fantastic day, and hopefully we'll talk again next week. Always a pleasure. Thank you.
My pleasure, Jill. God bless you. Take
God
care.
bless.
This is the Global Podcast Network, where executives and professionals connect, share, and inspire. Stay tuned for the conversations that drive success.